I just bought my first small business, and the first week, if I had to describe it in one word, was chaos. It was so different than what I thought it would be. And the process of going from deciding to buy a business to finding it to due diligence to negotiations, closing, all of that actually felt simpler than the first week actually on the job, if you will. There's a few things I did that I think really helped me navigate the chaos and that I would absolutely do again and highly recommend. And then some things I would do completely different next time around. So I'm going to share all of them with you in case you are on an entrepreneurial journey or you're looking to buy small businesses. Hopefully this will help you too. We'll kind of go back and forth. The first thing I did that was really good and I would recommend to anybody is create a checklist for yourself of your first week on the job or your first week of ownership with everything you need to do that for that week before you close. So I developed this list. I developed a post-closing checklist, which was this really comprehensive document full of everything we needed to do after the actual closing happened of the business. And I also developed a whole separate list for my assistant, all the things she was responsible for helping me do as soon as we closed. So the really comprehensive list, super, super helpful. Everything from like, go change all the passwords on this stuff, go make sure all this stuff is authenticated, make sure that the hiring post goes out because we knew we needed to hire pretty immediately after we purchased the business, make sure that all of the logos, we changed the logo, make sure all those things are changed out, like all these different like little things that we needed to do, make sure that, you know, the final like legal stuff is wrapped. So many different things. I could even like give you an example of the post-close checklist that I had, but this super comprehensive document with everything we needed to do that like truly wrapped the business like buying process. And then I took that, like I said, and I made a whole separate list for my assistant. Here's all the things to do the first few weeks that we need to get done. And then I made myself a separate list that was like everything the first week on the job. Here's every single thing you need to do. That really kept me on track. I am a list person, so whatever your like preferred organizational method is, you could do, but I highly recommend developing all of this in the couple weeks leading up to your closing. That way you're not like, okay, we're closed, I own this, now I'm scrambling. That really, really helped me stay on track. And I wasn't as far behind as I might have been if I hadn't had those things in place. We'll kind of flip to what I would do differently. I had a lot of assumptions about how this business was going to run before I purchased it. Now, obviously, I purchased it for a reason. I purchased it with certain things in mind and certain things I wanted to change, grow, whatever. But I would say that I wish I would have gone in a little bit more open-minded to being more patient. My husband actually ended up telling me something that I thought was really great advice. He was like, we're in a position of transition right now, and you can't necessarily like grow a ton when you're transitioning in any kind of like season or business or part of life. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. Cause I thought I was going to come in day one, immediately start every marketing initiative I had, you know, dreamed up, every single lead generation idea, every single way to grow the brand and expose it and get it bigger within a month or two. And that was just pretty unrealistic. There were so many operational things that we didn't understand. There were so many little minute things. I thought, for instance, that like certain tasks were going to take my assistant like just a few hours a week, and it ended up being, we got into it working on stuff together, and it was like 10 to 15 hours that it took us to get certain things done. So you just don't really know what it's going to take until you get into it. You can prepare as much as possible, like I said, and I did prepare a lot, and I had lists and I had things, but you just don't really know what it's going to be like to run a business until you do it, especially if you've never worked in the industry and you've never run a business of this kind, which I haven't. It's a residential home cleaning business. I've never worked in this space. I've never owned a business that did this before. So I just didn't really understand all of the intricacies of like scheduling, and the customer service in this business is a little bit different than what I've done before. Dealing with employees and hiring is very different in this space than other hiring I've done before. So there's just so many things. Give yourself a lot of like room and patience, and don't go into it thinking like day one, we're going to grow this thing and completely change it. Just try to get the lay of the land. You'll get way less frustrated with yourself and others around you, quite frankly, if you go into it with that. Because I was putting a ton of pressure on myself the first couple of weeks of owning this, thinking that like it had to go this certain way. And like that just was never how it was going to go. It was always going to take some time. Give yourself some time, some space, some patience. It'll make a really huge difference. And then you can kind of see things more clearly because you've actually given yourself time to kind of figure out what needs to change, what needs to operate better. And then you can kind of go into that growth phase instead of immediately thinking that's going to happen. Another good thing that I did that I would highly recommend is hiring yourself an assistant, operations manager, GM, like whatever the situation is, whatever the administrative organizational help is based on the kind of business that you buy, have them hired, ready to go, ready to start before closing. So I have my operations manager for Mamas for the cleaning business. She's actually an employee of mine in another business too. And I knew she hadn't worked in this kind of business, but I knew all the traits she had. what would make her excellent in this business too. So she's high attention to detail. She has great communication skills. She is like on the ball. I've never known anybody more like on the ball than her. I knew she would do great. So when she was willing to come on part-time with me, I was like, perfect. This is seamless. So whether you already know somebody or you can bring somebody in from another business or you need to like fully hire, go ahead and have that person in place. I would have been drowning without her the first few weeks. I would not have been able to handle it, quite frankly, with everything else I have going on. So making sure you already have some really good people in place that help you. I've said this before in other videos too, but I already had my accounting team in place too. I had my attorney who was obviously helping me through the buying process as well, but I have her for other things like employee contracts, buttoning up legal things around the businesses, all that kind of stuff. So I already had a lot of really good people in place, and I would recommend you have your whole team kind of ready to roll before you actually close. You will be in such a better position. You won't feel alone or like you're drowning. Something else I absolutely would have changed, or I will change in the future, is when we actually closed on this business, because if we had closed in different timing, it would have made the first week so much easier. So as an example, this business is a invoice-based business as soon as cleanings are completed. And payroll is run on a weekly basis in this business as well. So what that means is if you close in the middle of the week, it becomes very complicated because payroll runs Monday to Friday. It's paid the following week. Well, because we closed in the middle of the week on a Wednesday, it made the entire payment process very complicated because work was completed when the previous owners, still owned it, but they weren't paying for it until later in the week. So we got the revenue from when they had actually owned it. We had to do this whole true up process. It was a pain. It was really annoying. As somebody who is not a math girl, I was not enjoying it whatsoever. It was just really annoying too because you had actually closed on the business. It was done and you still had to keep dealing with stuff in the closing process a week later. So if I could do it again, this is a really practical thing, but I would make sure that whatever the typical billing cycle of the business is, whatever that looks like, or come to an agreement where you don't have to do a true up process. Just say as of this is all ours, this is all yours, we're done. Really think about the timing of your closing. Maybe it's on a monthly basis, you close on the first of the month or the last day of the month to make it really simple. It would have made the books cleaner too if we could do that, because we could have seen exactly what they did for all of April versus what we're doing for all of May. I'm looking at half of April and part of May to see our first kind of 6 weeks of profitability. There's just a lot of things that you can do if you think about the timing in a really specific way that can set you up for more success this first few weeks. Another couple of things I did that I think are good and that I would do again is I jumped immediately into hiring as soon as we could. We knew we needed to hire at least one person, but I'm really glad we went kind of overboard with it and got a lot more team members, because it's an industry that typically has, it has a decent amount of turnover. And we ended up having some people who chose to transition out with the sale of the business, which is pretty typical. It wasn't crazy to assume that. So I'm glad I had a lot more people kind of ready to go and on deck. Within a few weeks of owning the business, I was already onboarding 3 new employees. And I think that was something that really put us in a position where we were poised to grow, where we would not have been at all before. And if I had waited to kind of see what would happen with people, I would have really been in a deficit in terms of labor force. So I absolutely recommend getting there, figuring out immediately, going overboard with hiring if you can, if your model supports that. Obviously different businesses are different, but at least having some good candidates, even if you haven't fully hired them, having some good people, because transitions in business ownership, they always create turnover and you kind of just need to be prepared for that. I'm really glad that I was. But on the flip side, in terms of what I would do differently, is when you need to hire, especially in service-based businesses like this, in home services, things like this, you have to go through typical job hunting processes and recruiting, posting jobs on Indeed and posting them in different platforms and stuff. And the truth is, if you don't pay to play, you're not getting good candidates. That's just the facts. The minute I started paying for Indeed Premium, and I also went to the recruiting side of care.com, which they supply they're a platform, if you don't know what they are, for nannies, babysitting, senior care, housekeeping, all different kinds of home-based things like that, and family care things. The minute I started paying for subscriptions for those and for Indeed, I got tons of great candidates. I had been spinning my wheels, doing all kinds of other manual stuff, posting in Facebook groups and this and that. None of my good candidates came from there. I also paid for a Craigslist subscription, which I know is so random, but in the home services space, Craigslist is still pretty big for finding employment. But my best candidates and the ones I ended up hiring came from care.com and from Indeed as soon as I started paying for those subscriptions. So I wouldn't hesitate on that. I wouldn't think I could like work the system because you just can't. These platforms, they know what they're doing now. It will take you a very long time to find a good volume of candidates and that are truly qualified for your positions. If you don't pay, if you have a lot of time to hire, like sure, don't pay. But if you need to hire like really quickly, like I did, just go ahead and bite the bullet. I wish I would have done it days before I did. I would have been like in a better position a lot more quickly and would have been able to increase our volume of cleanings per week. Those are just a few of the things that I've been learning so far. And like I said, like this whole series I'm doing on small business ownership, it is not some like perfected guide on exactly what to do and how to do it. I'm just documenting my journey. I'm documenting the process because truly I did not know what I was doing when I decided to buy this business a few months ago. My husband and I were just like, let's buy a business. We have been thinking about it and talking about it. We did it. We had no help, expertise, experience, guidance. We just have been figuring our way through it and fumbling at times, doing things that are working at other times. So I just want to document it to help other people who might be considering this, whether you're a founder of other businesses like me, but you've decided to start acquiring them instead of like starting new things, whether you are somebody who's like in a 9-to-5 and you're like just ready to break out of that and you want to do it through small business ownership. That's a really growing space, which I think is so amazing. Or you're just curious what it really is like to like buy a business that already exists. Whatever reason you're here, I hope this is helpful for you. I am just somebody who is like figuring out as I go. And I just want to share anything practical or helpful that I have along the way. So if you're curious to learn more about our small business buying journey, be sure to follow along and I'll see you next time.